My name is Mia. I am 29 years old. I believed in love. I believed in marriage. I believed in my husband. But now, I am not so sure. When I met Alex, I was 25. I worked as a nurse in a small hospital. My life was quiet. I lived in a small apartment. I worked, I cooked, I read books. I didn't go out much. I didn't have many friends. Then one day, I met Alex at a coffee shop. I was waiting in line. He stood behind me and smiled. He said, "Cold day, isn't it?" I smiled back. We talked while waiting. He said he liked the same kind of coffee as me. That made me smile more. After that day, he came to the coffee shop again. We talked again. Then again. After 1 week, he asked for my phone number. I gave it to him. He started texting me. Every morning he said, "Good morning." Every night he said, "Sleep well." He asked how my day was. He listened to me. He said I was special. I started to feel happy again. I waited for his texts. I waited for his calls. He made me laugh. He made me feel beautiful. After 2 months, we were a couple. He brought me flowers. He took me to dinner. He opened doors for me. He said sweet things. He made me feel loved. He met my parents. My mother said, "He's very polite." My father said, "He looks serious, but kind." After 6 months, he asked me to marry him. He gave me a small silver ring. It wasn't big, but it was beautiful. I said yes. We had a small wedding, just family and close friends. He looked at me and said, "I will love you forever." I believed him. The first year of marriage was good. We moved into a small apartment with a balcony. I planted flowers there. He helped me set up the kitchen. We chose curtains together. We laughed a lot. We watched movies on the sofa. We cooked together. We held hands while walking to the market. He kissed my forehead every morning before work. I felt safe. I felt loved. But slowly, things started to change. He stopped talking to me in the evenings. He stayed quiet during dinner. He looked at his phone all the time. When I asked, "Is something wrong?" he said, "No, just tired." He stopped saying, "Good morning." He stopped asking about my day. He came home late, sometimes after midnight. He never told me why. One day, I made his favorite dinner, chicken with lemon and rice. I lit a candle. I wore the dress he liked. He walked in and said, "Why did you cook all this?" "I'm not hungry," I said, "but I made it for you." He said, "You didn't ask if I wanted it." Then he sat on the sofa and looked at his phone. My heart felt heavy. I ate alone that night. Another day, I found a receipt in his pocket. It was from a restaurant, a place we never went to. The date was 2 days ago. The time was 9:45 p.m. That night he told me he was working late. I asked him, "Where were you on Wednesday night?" He said, "At work." I showed him the receipt. He looked at it and said, "It was with coworkers. Just dinner." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He said, "You always ask too many questions." He didn't say sorry. He didn't hold my hand. He just went into the bedroom. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. I felt cold inside. Was he lying? Was he hiding something? Or was I just imagining things? The next few weeks were worse. He changed his phone password. He took his phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. He smiled at messages, but never at me. I started to feel invisible. One day, I came home early. I wasn't feeling well. I had a headache. When I opened the door, I heard his voice on the balcony. He was on the phone. He said, "She has no idea. I told her I'm staying late at work." My heart dropped. My legs felt weak. I stood there, frozen. Then I walked to the kitchen and made tea, pretending I didn't hear anything. He came in and smiled. He said, "Hey, you're home early." I said, "Yes." I wasn't feeling well. He kissed my forehead, just like he used to. But now it felt different. It didn't feel warm. It felt like a lie. That night I cried in the bathroom. I turned on the water so he wouldn't hear. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red. My face looked tired. I didn't know who I was anymore. Where was the man I married? Where was the kind smile? The sweet voice? The love? I started writing in a small notebook. I didn't want to forget how I felt. One page said, "He is next to me, but I feel alone." Another page said, "He kisses me, but I feel nothing." One day, my friend Clara invited me for coffee. We hadn't talked in a while. She looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" I smiled. "I'm fine." She looked at me harder. "You don't look fine." I shook my head. I couldn't lie anymore. I said, "I think Alex is hiding something." She reached out and touched my hand. "You don't deserve that, Mia." Her words stayed with me. That night I asked Alex, "Do you still love me?" He looked up from his phone. "What kind of question is that?" I said, "You don't talk to me. You don't look at me. I feel like a stranger in this house." He sighed. "You're too emotional. Everything is fine. Stop overthinking." Then he left the room. But everything was not fine. And I knew it. One day, I followed him. I told him I was working late. But really, I left work early. I watched him from across the street. He entered a small restaurant. He wasn't alone. A woman was with him. She smiled at him. He smiled back. They sat close. He touched her hand. She laughed. My heart broke into 1,000 pieces. I walked away before he saw me. My hands were shaking. My eyes were full of tears. I went home and sat in the dark. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, quiet. When he came home that night, I was still sitting. He looked at me. "Why are you sitting in the dark?" Said, "Did you have a good dinner?" He paused. "What do you mean?" Said, "Was she pretty?" He didn't answer. And in that silence, I finally knew the man standing in front of me, he was not the man I married. Before I share the rest of my story, I want to ask you something. Where are you listening from? It gives me strength to know someone is hearing my words, someone who understands me. Please tell me in the comments. I would really love to know. He stood in the doorway, looking at me. His face didn't change, not even a flicker of guilt. I waited for him to speak, but he said nothing. So I stood up. I walked past him and said, "I saw you." He followed me into the kitchen. Saw me where? "In the restaurant," I said. "With her." He looked away. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You said you were at work," I continued. "You looked very comfortable with her." "She's just a friend," he said. I laughed. It was a cold, sharp laugh. "You held her hand, Alex." "She's going through a hard time," he said. I was comforting her. "Do you hold hands with every woman who's sad?" I asked. He sighed. "You're being dramatic again." My voice shook, but I didn't back down. "Do you love her?" He didn't answer. I asked again, "Do you love her, Alex?" He sat down at the table. He looked tired, but I didn't feel sorry for him. "I don't know," he said finally. It just happened. I felt something heavy in my chest, like my heart was falling slowly, breaking with each second. "And what about me?" I asked. "What am I to you now?" He looked at me, finally. "I didn't plan this, Mia." "That's not an answer," I said. "Do you want to be with me or with her?" He stayed silent. That silence hurt more than anything he could have said. I turned around and walked to the bedroom. I sat on the bed, staring at the wall. My hands were shaking. My legs felt weak. He didn't follow me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my side of the bed. He stayed on the sofa. I could hear him turning, moving, not sleeping either. The next morning, I made tea for myself. Just one cup. I didn't ask if he wanted any. He walked in. His hair was messy. His eyes were tired. I didn't speak. He sat down and said, "I didn't mean to hurt you." I looked at him. "But you did." He nodded. "I know." I waited. He said, "I don't know what I want. I feel lost." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the cup across the room, but I didn't. I said, "I am not your practice ground, Alex. I am your wife." "I know," he said quietly. "Then act like it," I said, "or let me go." He looked at me, but he didn't answer. That day, I went to work like usual. I helped people. I smiled. I said polite words. But inside, I felt like I was falling apart. When I came home, he was there. Dinner was on the table. Pasta and bread. A candle. Like he was trying. I sat down. We ate in silence. After a while, he said, "Do you still love me?" I looked at him. "I don't know. I used to. But I don't recognize you anymore." He looked down. "You broke something," I said. "And I don't know if it can be fixed." He said, "I miss us." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. "You should have thought about that before holding her hand." He didn't speak again. The next few days were strange. We lived in the same space, but it felt cold. Quiet. We talked about small things, groceries, laundry, bills, but never about us. Then one night he asked, "Can we try again?" I looked at him. "Try what?" He said, "To fix this. I'll stop seeing her. I'll do better." I asked, "Why now?" He said, "Because I saw your face that night. I've never seen you look at me like that. It scared me." "You should have been scared of losing me long ago," I said. "I know," he said. "But I was stupid." I looked at him. He looked serious. He looked honest. But I didn't know if I could believe him anymore. "Actions, not words," I said. "Show me. If you really want this, show me." He nodded. He deleted her number. I saw it. He changed his routine. He came home early. He looked at me when we talked. He put down his phone. For a while, I watched. I didn't say much. I was tired. I didn't want to hope and break again. One evening we sat on the balcony. The sun was low. The sky was soft pink. He said, "I miss sitting here with you." I looked at the flowers. They were dry. I hadn't watered them in weeks. I said, "I used to love this place." He was quiet. Then he said, "Let's fix it together." We didn't say anything else. But the next day, he bought new soil. We planted new flowers. We worked side by side. It felt like old times. For a moment. Then I looked at him. Really looked. And I realized something. I missed the way I used to feel. Safe. Wanted. Loved. But now, even with him next to me, I didn't feel that anymore. One night we were in bed. He turned to me and said, "Do you think you'll ever trust me again?" I looked at the ceiling. "I don't know," I said. "Trust doesn't come back just because someone says sorry." He turned away. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come. He was trying now. But why only after everything broke? Why not before? I thought about leaving. I thought about packing a bag and going back to my parents. but part of me still hoped something could change. A week later, I saw a message on his phone. It was from her. It said, "Just thinking of you." He hadn't replied, but he hadn't blocked her either. That night, I didn't say anything. I just watched him eat dinner. He talked about work. He talked about the neighbor's dog, but I didn't hear a word. My heart was screaming inside. After dinner, I said, "You said you stopped talking to her." He looked confused. "I did." "Then why is she still texting you?" I asked. His face changed. I stood up. "You're not serious, Alex. You're pretending. You don't want to change." "I didn't reply," he said. "I ignored it." I shouted, "Then why didn't you block her?" He didn't answer. "I gave you another chance," I said, "and you gave me another lie." He reached out. "Mia, please." I stepped back. "No more, Alex," I said. "I don't believe you anymore." He was quiet. For once, he had nothing to say. I packed a small bag that night. He sat on the sofa, holding his head in his hands. I walked to the door. He didn't stop me. As I stepped outside, the air felt cold, but it also felt clean. I didn't know where I was going next, but I knew I wasn't going back. I didn't look back as I closed the door behind me. I walked to the end of the street with my small bag. My heart was heavy, but my steps felt strong. The cold night air touched my skin. It was the first time in months I felt awake. I took the bus to my parents' house. My mom opened the door. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Mia, what happened?" I couldn't speak right away. She pulled me inside and held me. Her hug was warm. I hadn't felt that kind of safety in a long time. My father came out of the living room. He looked at me, then at the bag. "I left," I said. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded slowly and said, "Your room is ready." That night, I slept in my old bed. The pillow smelled like clean laundry. I lay on my side and closed my eyes. I didn't cry. I just breathed. Slowly, deeply. The next morning, my mom made pancakes. She always made them when I was sad as a child. She placed a plate in front of me and sat across the table. "I don't want to talk about it," I said softly. She nodded. "Okay." We ate in silence, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt kind. That afternoon, I went for a walk around the neighborhood. Some people smiled at me, recognizing me. I smiled back, but it was a quiet smile. Later, I sat on the porch. My mom joined me. "Are you going to stay here for a while?" she asked. "I don't know," I said. "I just need space." "You can stay as long as you need," she said. I leaned my head on her shoulder. "Thank you." In the evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Alex. "Please talk to me." I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, another one. "I'm sorry, Please come home." Still, I said nothing. Then he called. I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over the green button. Then I let it ring. The next day, he sent another message. "I'll wait. I'll do anything." He was trying again, just like before. But I didn't feel anything when I read his words. Not sadness, not anger, just emptiness. I put the phone away. 1 week passed. Then 2. I got a temporary job at a local clinic. The work helped. I focused on patients, not pain. I smiled again. Not big smiles, but real ones. One afternoon, I was walking home from the clinic when I saw someone sitting on the steps of my parents' house. It was Alex. He stood up when he saw me. "Mia," he said, "can we talk?" I walked up slowly. I didn't open the gate. "I don't know what more there is to say," I said. "I messed up," he said. "I know that." I didn't speak. "I thought I could fix it," he continued, "but I kept breaking it more. I was selfish." "Why did you lie again?" I asked. "You promised." "I was afraid," he said. "Afraid to lose both of you." "You already lost me," I said. "The night you didn't block her." He lowered his head. "I don't expect you to forgive me." "Then why are you here?" I asked. "I just needed to say I'm sorry," he said. "Truly. I don't want to keep hurting you." I looked at him. He didn't look proud anymore. He looked like a man who finally understood what he broke. I said, "I loved you. I trusted you. I married you." "I know," he said. "And I ruined that." We stood there in silence for a moment. He said, "If you ever want to come back, I'll be better." I looked him in the eyes. "I'm not coming back, Alex." He nodded, slowly. "Okay." He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He just looked at me for a second longer, then turned and walked away. And I let him go. That evening, my mom sat with me on the couch. "Was that him?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Are you okay?" I thought about it. Then I said, "Yes, I think I am." 3 months passed. I moved into a small apartment across town. It had big windows and soft yellow walls. I planted flowers on the balcony again. I worked at the clinic. I met new people. I started laughing more. Clara came over one Saturday. She brought chocolate cake. We sat on the floor, talking like old times. "I'm proud of you," she said. I smiled. "I'm proud of me too." One evening, I walked to the market. I saw a couple holding hands, laughing. For a moment, I felt a small ache. Then I kept walking. I wasn't ready for love again, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I had learned something important. Love should not hurt. Love should not lie. And if someone truly loves you, you won't have to ask them to choose. I knew something was wrong the day he followed me to the mailbox. It was just a few steps outside our house, but he came out anyway. He didn't say anything. He just stood there and watched me. His arms were crossed. His eyes never moved. I looked at him and smiled, but he didn't smile back. He asked, "Why are you taking so long?" I held the letters in my hand and said, "I was just looking through them." He didn't answer. He just turned and walked back inside. I followed him. I didn't want to make him upset. My name is Elena. I am 30 years old. I live in a small house in the USA. I have been married to Tomas for 2 years. People think we are a happy couple. When they see us on the street, we are walking close. We hold hands. We smile. They think we are in love, but they don't know the truth. They don't see what happens inside our home. They don't see how he looks at me. They don't hear his voice when he is angry. They don't know he watches everything I do. In the beginning, Tomas was kind. He sent me messages every morning. He brought me flowers. He asked about my day. He made me feel special. He always wanted to be close to me. He said, "I feel safe when you are near." I liked that. I thought he loved me. We got married quickly. I didn't think too much. I just felt lucky. I wanted to believe in a strong love. I wanted to be a good wife. But after we got married, things started to change. At first, the changes were small. He didn't like me wearing makeup. He said, "You look better without it." So I stopped. Then he said my dresses were too short. He said, "Other men can see your legs." I wanted to make him happy, so I stopped wearing them. Then he didn't like me meeting my friends. "They talk too much," he said. "They don't understand marriage." I told him, "They are my friends. They don't mean harm." But he didn't listen. He just got quiet. And when Tomas was quiet, it was worse than when he was angry. I remember one evening when Julia called me. Julia is my best friend. We grew up together. We used to talk every day. That day, I was laughing on the phone. Tomas walked into the room and looked at me. I stopped laughing. He waited until I finished the call. Then he asked, "What was so funny?" I told him it was just a joke. He said, "Do you always laugh like that with her?" I said, "It's nothing. Just silly talk." But I saw his eyes. He didn't believe me. That night, he didn't speak to me. He turned off the lights and went to sleep without a word. Little by little, I changed. I stopped laughing on the phone. I stopped calling my friends. I stayed home all the time. I cooked, I cleaned, I sat next to Tomas. I waited for him to ask me questions, and I gave him the answers he wanted to hear. "Where did you go today?" he would ask. "Nowhere," I said. "Just the store." He always asked what I bought, how long I stayed, and who I saw. If I smiled too much, he asked why. If I wore a new blouse, He looked at me strange. "Who are you dressing up for?" he would say. I used to say, "For you." But after some time, I said nothing. At work, my manager said I looked tired. She said, "You used to smile more." I told her I was fine. But inside, I was not fine. Inside, I was always worried. I checked the clock before I left work. If I came home late, Tomas would notice. He always noticed. One time, I was 10 minutes late because I missed the bus. When I walked in, he was waiting by the window. "What took so long?" he asked. I said, "The bus was slow." He looked at me and said nothing. Then he walked away. Tomas always says he loves me. Every night he says, "I want to protect you." But I don't feel safe. I feel small. I feel like a child in my own home. I don't speak much anymore. I think a lot, but I don't say the words out loud. I wake up, make coffee, pack his lunch, clean the house, and stay quiet. I watch the window. I look at the sky. Sometimes I think about my old life, before marriage. I had friends. I went for walks. I laughed. I made plans. But now, I do none of those things. Tomas says he loves me, but he never asks how I feel. He never says, "Are you happy?" He just says, "Where are you going?" Or "Who are you talking to?" "Why are you wearing that?" I want to tell him, love is not this. But I don't. I stay quiet. I make dinner. I smile. I sit next to him on the couch. I watch shows I don't like. I laugh when he laughs. I pretend. One night I was washing the dishes. He came up behind me and said, "You didn't answer my call earlier." I told him I didn't hear the phone. He said, "I called twice." I said sorry. He stood there for a moment, then walked away. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about the phone. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me. I kept thinking, why do I feel scared all the time? But I don't want to leave. I don't know why. Maybe I still want to believe this is love. Maybe I think it will change. Maybe I think he will see me again. The real me. Or maybe I'm just afraid of what comes next. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next morning, Tomas was already awake when I opened my eyes. He was sitting at the edge of the bed, looking at his phone. I turned slowly and said, "Good morning." He didn't look at me. He just said, "You sleep too long." I didn't answer. I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I made coffee. I made toast. I placed a plate on the table for him. He sat down and started eating. After a few minutes, he asked, "What are you doing today?" I said, "Just cleaning the house. Maybe going to the store." He asked, "Which store?" I looked at him. "Just the one on Main Street." He nodded, then said, "Don't stay too long." I left the house after cleaning the kitchen and folding the laundry. It was a sunny day. The street was quiet. I walked slowly. I wanted to feel the sun on my face. I wanted to feel something that was not fear. In the store, I looked at the bread and milk, but I didn't buy anything right away. I was just standing there when I heard someone call my name. It was Julia. She looked surprised to see me. "Elena," she said with a smile. "It's been so long." I smiled too, but I felt nervous. I looked around like someone might see me. "Hi," I said. "Yes, it's been a while." Julia asked how I was. I said I was fine. I always said that. She looked at me and said, "You don't look fine." I laughed a little. "I'm just tired." She touched my arm. "You can call me anytime, you know." I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't call. When I got home, Tomas was sitting in the living room. He didn't say anything when I came in. I put the bags down and took off my shoes. Then he asked, "Why were you gone so long?" I said, "I ran into Julia." He looked up. "What did you talk about?" I said, "Nothing. Just small things." He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Don't forget who your real family is." I said nothing. I just stood there, quiet. He turned his eyes back to the TV, and I went to the kitchen. That night, I lay in bed next to him. He was already asleep. I stared at the ceiling. I listened to the soft sound of his breathing. I thought about Julia's face. I thought about her eyes when she said I didn't look fine. I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I didn't want to wake him. I turned my body to face the window. The moonlight was coming through the curtains. I watched it and tried to feel calm, but I didn't feel calm. I felt small and lost. The next week was quiet. Tomas didn't say much. He was working late. He came home, ate dinner, watched TV, and went to sleep. I cleaned the house, cooked meals, and folded clothes. I didn't go out unless I had to. I didn't call Julia. I didn't call anyone. I stayed home and did my part. I thought maybe if I was a good wife, he would love me again. Maybe he would smile like he used to. Maybe he would ask how I was feeling, but he didn't. He just watched what I did and checked what I said. One day, I was cleaning the bedroom when I heard a sound. I turned and saw Tomas standing in the door. I smiled and said, "You're home early." He didn't smile back. He looked around the room. Then he asked, "What were you doing?" I said, "Just cleaning." He stepped inside and picked up a photo from the table. It was a picture of us from 2 years ago. We were smiling. I had my arm around his waist. We looked happy. He stared at the photo for a moment, then put it back down. "Do you miss those days?" he asked. I didn't know what to say. I nodded slowly. "Yes," I said. "Sometimes." He said nothing more and walked away. That evening, he was quiet again, but something felt different. He looked at me longer. His words were softer. He asked if the food was warm enough. He asked if I wanted to watch something special on TV. I was confused. I didn't know what to say. I just said, "I'm fine." He nodded. "Good," he said. "I want you to be happy." I smiled a little, but my stomach felt tight. I didn't trust the change. I didn't understand it. Later that night, we sat on the couch. He reached for my hand. He held it gently. He said, "I know I'm not easy." I looked at him. It was the first time he ever said that. "I only do this because I care," he said. "I don't want to lose you." I felt my throat get tight. I wanted to ask, "Why do you think love is watching me all the time?" But I didn't. I just said, "I know." He kissed my hand. "You're the only one I trust," he said. I nodded again. I didn't speak. When he went to sleep, I stayed on the couch. I looked at the window. The room was dark. I thought about his words. I thought about how he said he cared. I asked myself, is this what care looks like? I didn't know the answer. I only knew how I felt. And I felt tired. I felt like I was always careful. Careful with my words. Careful with my time. Careful with my face. Even when I was happy, I had to hide it. Even when I was sad, I had to smile. A few days later, Julia sent me a message. It said, "Thinking of you. Hope you're okay." I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't reply. I was afraid Tomas might see it. I erased the message. Then I felt sorry. Julia was kind. She was just trying to help. But in this house, even kindness felt dangerous. That night, Tomas came home late. He was in a good mood. He brought me a small cake. He said, "I passed by your favorite bakery." I smiled. "Thank you," I said. I wanted to believe it meant something. I wanted to believe we were okay. But deep down, I felt a weight. A feeling that something was always wrong. Even in quiet moments, I felt like I was holding my breath. I don't know when I stopped being myself. I don't know the exact day. But I remember what it felt like falling without knowing where the ground is, like living but not fully alive, like walking through a dream you cannot wake from. But I still stayed. I didn't pack my things. I didn't walk away. I stayed in the house. I cooked. I cleaned. I answered his questions. I smiled when I needed to. I did all the things a wife should do. But inside, something was different. Something had started to break. Not loud, not fast, but slowly, quietly, like water dripping on stone. It was a cold morning. The sky was gray and the house was quiet. Tomas had already left for work. I stood in the kitchen holding my coffee. I looked out the window. The street was still. I could hear the soft sound of a dog barking far away. I didn't move. I just stood there for a long time. Something inside me felt heavy. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just felt tired in a way I couldn't explain. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I washed the dishes, even though there weren't many. I wiped the table twice. I folded a towel that didn't need folding. I moved through the house like a ghost. My body was busy, but my mind was far away. I kept thinking about my life. I thought about the woman I used to be. I used to sing when I cleaned. I used to dance in the kitchen when no one was watching. Now, I didn't sing. I didn't dance. I moved quietly, like someone might be listening. At lunch, I didn't feel hungry. I sat at the table with a small sandwich and a glass of water. I looked at the chair across from me. It was empty. I thought about all the times Tomas sat there, all the questions, all the long looks, all the silence. I didn't hate him. I didn't even feel angry. I just felt nothing, like something important had gone missing, but I didn't know when or how. Later that day, I walked to the store. I wore a coat and a scarf, even though it wasn't that cold. I wanted to feel covered. I wanted to feel small. I walked past a flower shop. The smell of roses came through the open door. It reminded me of the early days when Tomas brought me flowers. I stopped walking for a moment. I looked at the red and yellow petals. They looked soft and warm. A small part of me wanted to buy one. Just one flower. Just to remember what it felt like. But I didn't. When I got home, Tomas was already back. He was sitting on the couch watching the news. He looked at me as I came in. He asked, "Where were you?" I said, "Just the store." He asked, "Why so long?" I said, "I walked slowly." He didn't speak again. I took off my coat and went to the kitchen. I washed my hands. I made dinner. I didn't ask if he wanted anything special. I just made soup and bread. He ate it in silence. I didn't ask how his day was. I didn't want to hear about it. I just wanted the evening to pass. That night, I stood in the shower longer than usual. The water was warm and soft. I closed my eyes. I let the water touch my face. I thought about nothing and everything at the same time. I wanted to feel clean, like I could wash away the heavy feeling in my chest. But the water didn't help. I stepped out, dried myself, and looked at my face in the mirror. My eyes looked older. My skin looked pale. I didn't see the woman I used to be. When I went to bed, Tomas was already there. He was reading something on his phone. I lay down beside him. He didn't say goodnight. I didn't say it either. I turned to face the wall. I listened to the quiet sound of the screen as he scrolled. I stared at the wall for a long time. I thought, this is my life now. Not loud, not violent, but still, it hurt. The next day, something strange happened. Tomas brought me a small box. He said, I saw this in a store and thought of you. Inside was a necklace. It was gold-colored with a small heart. I looked at it and smiled. Thank you, I said. He seemed pleased. He said, you should wear it. It suits you. I put it on. He kissed my forehead. I smiled again, but something inside me was quiet. This gift did not change the way I felt. It did not take away the long days or the heavy silence. It was just a small thing in a big story. Later that week, I ran into Julia again. This time, she stopped me before I could walk away. She said, Elena, please, just give me 5 minutes. I nodded. We sat on a bench outside the store. She looked at me with soft eyes. She said, you don't have to tell me everything. I just want you to know I'm here. I miss you. I felt something in my throat. My eyes were wet, but I didn't cry. I looked down at my hands. I said, I miss me too. She reached for my hand and held it. We sat there for a moment without words. Then I stood up and said, I have to go. She nodded. Okay, but I'll be here. That night, I told Tomas I saw Julia. He didn't get angry. He just said, be careful. People talk too much. I said, we didn't talk long. He nodded and turned away. I looked at the back of his head. For the first time, I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel small. I just felt done. Not with him. Not with the house. But with pretending. The days after that were quiet. I cooked, I cleaned, I smiled when I had to. I wore the necklace he gave me. I answered his questions. I stayed where I was, but something inside me had changed. I no longer waited for his love. I no longer hoped for his care. I no longer believed that love was control. I did not fight. I did not leave. But I knew now. I knew what this was. And I knew what it was not. Tomas said he loved me. But love is not fear. Love is not question. Love is not watching every move. I didn't say these words out loud. I didn't have to. I just knew them inside. That was enough for me now.